I am PJ Browning, President and Publisher of Post and Courier, and I am joined by several members of our team tonight, but I am going to have Mitch come up, please. Mitch Hughes, our Executive Editor, and he's going to go over a few of the house rules. I'll let him be the head.
Yeah, thank you again for everybody for coming out to the Riley Park Club and the Rhetoric for having us. We've done 4 of these now, as PJ was saying, so we've learned a little bit in that process. We do have some ground rules that we've not had in place before. We just want to make sure everybody's aware of it. You should have had this handed to you as you walked in, so it shouldn't be a surprise. I think we sent an email out earlier today, but we just remind everybody to be respectful to both the panelists, the guests, and the other folks in the crowd. This is, our event. It's not necessarily like a town hall meeting. It's more of an interview that we've invited you all to sit in on and watch. So please no shouting, booing, or jeering. Everyone has that. We've already violated the rules. As you all know, you came in, you were invited to submit written questions that our team has taken a look at, and we're going to ask several of those, but we'd ask you not to shout the questions from the audience, please. And then no signs or other objects waving as we're getting through the event. And if we do have anybody that insists on breaking the rules over and over again, we will have to remove you, but we hope we don't have to do that. So thank you everybody for coming, really appreciate it. I'm going to hand it back over to PJ.
I've got a mic, so thank you. All right, it's my pleasure to introduce our 2 political reporters tonight. I have Caitlin Berg. And especially happy to have Senator Lindsey Graham on hand with us tonight. Thank you for coming. We know your schedule is very busy. And with that, I'll turn it over to you guys for the hard job.
Hello. Can you see me?
Excellent. Thank you, Senator, for coming out tonight, and thank all of you for coming out tonight after 5:30 on a Thursday, Friday Eve. That's how I like to think about it. But we're going to go ahead and get started here, Senator. Let's just start our conversation off with what always seems to be on people's minds when they see you. What has happened to Lindsey Graham? You went from infamously referring to Donald Trump as a race-baiting, xenophobic religious bigot to becoming one of the president's closest allies. Do you actually like this man, or do folks who suspect other motives have it right? Can you please explain?
Okay. Hello. So if you're going to have a discussion, this is the place. Isn't it beautiful? So thanks for doing this. Keep drinking. The more you drink, the better this will sound. So I lost. He won. He's president. I want him to succeed. I've come to like him. He's a handful. Generally speaking, the things I care about, he's doing a pretty good job on, and we should all want our president to be successful. And if you don't like him, you can vote him out in about, 16 months.
Well, do you view yourself as something of a neutralizer to Trump? Are you able to temper him a little bit to more traditional?
Well, so I talked to him today. So we played golf this weekend. He beats me not because I let him, but I just can't beat him. So I represent South Carolina. It's a beautiful place. President Trump's popular in our state. People here generally want me to help him where I can. I've found a space where he calls, we talk, we play golf. He calls, I listen, he talks. He's going to make decisions about things that affect everybody in the room. So we talked today about the red flag laws and the background checks. And I said, the time has come to do more than pray. And we'll find, hopefully, some bipartisan space here. How many of you own a gun? I did this in Newberry last night, and everybody raised their hand twice. How many of you own an AR-15? Wow. Okay. So if you were in New York, most people's hands probably wouldn't go up, and that's sort of where you come from. And I said, Mr. President, I've got a proposal with Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut, where Sandy Hook happened. And Senator Blumenthal are on opposite ends of the spectrum on most issues, but he's haunted by the shooting of those kids. And he's really trying hard to find a compromise with me that will sell with the president. And the president's determined to do something. So South Carolina can make their own decision about protective orders. But the grant program I'm creating with Senator Blumenthal goes like this. If you have a protective order law, we will give you a grant so that you can hire mental health professionals to help the cops determine which cases should go to the judge. Most police officers are not mental health specialists, but they see a lot of crap. And it allows some money to be set aside to allow them to make better judgments. Unlike a lot of these red flag statutes, this grant program is going to require police officers to petition the judge, not ex-spouses and neighbors who get mad at each other. It will allow private cause of action for the gun owner if you're wrongfully accused. I think it's a pretty good balance. All of you who raised your hands about owning guns, you have a right to own a gun, but we all bring it together. And my view is that there's some people out there that need help, not a gun. And I'm tired of trying to explain to parents who come to Washington why we didn't do something. If you got a rape list and a kill list and you're so disruptive that they have to shut the school down because of you, maybe you shouldn't buy a gun. So if the cops have been to your house 40 times because you're acting weird, and there's their tip on the FBI hotline that the person, Mr. Cruz, has threatened to kill everybody at Parkland, and he actually tries to do it, we've got to have some balance here so that the police can go to court with a robust due process to intervene before it's too late. So that's what we talked about today, about enhanced background checks. We talked about Afghanistan. I know everybody wants to leave the Mideast, but the Mideast is not going to leave us. I've seen what happens if you pull out too soon. I saw what happened in Iraq. I just said, you don't have to listen to me or Rand Paul, listen to your generals. So I really enjoyed the time I have with the president. I'm in a spot where I can be me. On national security, I'm in a different place than probably he is, but I'm trying to help him where I can.
I guess if I can follow up on that, is speaking highly of the president in public something that you, to follow up on what Caitlin was saying, something that you genuinely believe, or is it the price of access to him? Because that's often a theory that folks float. Another one, of course, you're up for election in 2020, and he remains very popular among Republican primary voters. And then you have other theories that, both you and Senator McConnell now have Russian-related nicknames of people on the left who think you're compromised. How genuine are these feelings that you're expressing?
When I voted for Sotomayor and Kagan, nobody asked me this. It's okay to help a Democrat. Sometimes it's not okay to help a Republican. There's no magic going on here. I'm a Republican in a Republican state who wants a Republican president to do well, but not at all costs. I'm not going to say things I don't believe. I'm not going to tell them, yeah, you can leave Syria, everything will be fine. Well, I don't believe that. I'm trying where I can to help him. I thought he made a good pick with Kavanaugh. He asked me for some names. I sent him 3 names. 2 of the names were Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. So when a guy, the president, is doing some of the things you like, I think you owe it to him. Is he popular in South Carolina? Yes. Am I up for re-election? Yes. But at the end of the day, I just feel like this is what I should be doing. I mean, I lose 0 sleep about saying nice things about him. I also lose 0 sleep to saying, hey, that's nuts.
All right, so you mentioned you played golf with the president.
Yes.
The Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington crew came out with a report today in which they've been counting all of the president's trips to Trump-branded properties that he profits off of. He has spent millions of dollars in taxpayer money on those trips, and you have, crew pointed out, been the most frequent member of Congress to join him on some of those visits. They argue that there are some conflicts of interest there, that he is using his position as President of the United States to benefit his private businesses. Do you have any concerns about that?
No. How many of you are glad that Donald Trump plays golf?
Woo!
Me too. That's 3 or 4 hours where you can't tweet. It's the best way to get to know him is to get in his world. The reason I don't play at my golf courses is because I don't have any.
There you go. I mean, he said during the campaign 2 things that were related to this. He said, number one, he criticized President Obama frequently for playing golf and said that he wouldn't have time to do so.
I don't think he'll do that again.
And he also said that he was going to divest in a lot of his businesses. Of course, the Trump Hotel in D.C. regularly hosts, international dignitaries who might want to curry favor with the Trump administration. There are all kinds of potential issues that could arise from this. None of that, you don't think any of that's inappropriate?
Well, the emolument clause case got kicked out. As far as I know, he doesn't charge me anything, so I'm not paying him anything. I bought a driver, he gave me a driver and I wound up having to buy it. So I probably just wanted to get rid of it. But the bottom line here is the people at the White House, the people in the government seem to be fine with the way he's conducting his business life. I don't think he's in it for the money. I really don't. I don't think he's trying to make money on being president. He's probably losing money. So I'm not worried. I don't know who Crew is, but I'm not worried.
All right. One area that Republicans often point to as an area of success, and I've certainly heard you do this a lot during the Trump administration, is the economy. This week, we saw the bond yields invert that raised some concerns for some economists that we could be heading towards a recession. It hurt the stock market. The stock market tanked on Wednesday. And a lot of people point to the trade war as exacerbating that situation. Are you worried at all that we might be headed towards a recession, and do you think that the trade war is contributing to that?
I think the trade war is contributing to kind of instability in the world economy. How could it not? You got the 2 largest economies in the world in a dogfight. The question is this fight worth having? How many of you believe that it's about time somebody pushed back against China?
Yeah.
All right, now most Democrats believe that too. So they're right. Chuck Schumer and I, before I ever met Donald Trump, had a China currency manipulation bill that would put tariffs on Chinese products that get a benefit from China manipulating the value of the yuan. The cheaper your money, the cheaper your product. And we're in the IMF system, we're in a world economy here where the dollar is basically floats based on economic factors, not manipulation by the government. So I don't know what you're supposed to do if you really want China to change. The pain they're experiencing is greater than the pain we're experiencing, and you see this throughout the world economy. Germany had negative growth this last quarter, and one of the reasons is because China's economy is slowing down. And as China's economy slows down, so will the world economy slow down. The question for Trump is, when is it a good deal? If you trust the Chinese, you're crazy because they're very mercantilistic when it comes to the way they do business. He told me today that the new tariffs, the 10% on the new $350 billion, that's going to hit them hard, but it's going to hit us too. How many people shop at Walmart? Well, Walmart said today things are okay, but it'll be a matter of time until you feel a little pinch at Walmart. So steel and aluminum were put out of business in America. These steel tariffs, and I'm not a big fan of tariffs as policy, but they're pretty good tools to get people's attention. BMW's prices are going to go up, Boeing's going to go up, Volvo will go up, but now you got steel plants opening back up. You got aluminum being made in America for the first time. So what you see, and this is important, the supply chain used to be dominated by China. Now people are making bets outside of China. They're going to Vietnam, they're going to other places in Asia to have a supply chain not totally tied to the Chinese economy. The day that happens enough, China will change, because if they lose control of the world supply chain, their economy is going to hit a rock or hit a wall. So I think the recession is not going to happen because the fundamentals are strong here, but I do worry about what winning looks like with China. And I told the president we got to sit down among ourselves and figure out what does winning look like and try to get there.
I have a question for you, Senator.
Keep drinking, this is boring.
I'm going to need a microphone, yeah, I'm sorry. Just continuing on this talk about the economy, there have been some individuals in the Republican Party, namely Mark Sanford, who has been pushing for a larger discussion on the issues of debt, deficit, and government spending. do you think that the Republican Party as a whole needs a course correction when it comes to focusing on those issues, or are y'all doing all right?
Okay. So how many people would like the country to get out of debt? Okay, how about this? How would you like to have a debt that's more sustainable? How many of you have debt? So what drives the long-term debt and what makes us grease over time? Who's born from 46 to 64? Who's born after 64? Good luck. All of us are going to retire. We're called the baby boomers, and we're going to wipe out Medicare and Social Security. When I was born in 55, there were like 16 workers for every retiree. There's now 3, and there'll be 2 one day. I appreciate Mark focusing on the debt and the deficit, but the military spending that has been increased is necessary given the threats we face. The discretionary budget is about 29% of all spending. 70% of all spending is either entitlements, Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, interest on the debt itself. There's one way to get out of debt, or to lessen the debt, is entitlement reform. There is no other way. If anybody tells you you can grow the economy fast enough to overcome the unfunded liability of Medicare and Social Security, they're lying to you. This is the Republican talking point. We don't have to worry about the deficit because we'll grow our way out of it. In the Bernie world, just tax the rich. If you took the entire wealth of the top 1%, it would be half of what you need just to deal with Medicare's unfunded liability. What do I mean by unfunded liability? The promises made to Medicare and Social Security recipients cannot be met because the number of people paying into the system is a lot less than the number of people taking out. We're living longer and we have fewer kids. 2 ways to deal with this. Strom Thurmond had 4 kids after he's 67. I don't see that taking off. So we need rational immigration to get more people into our country to supplement a declining workforce. So I told the president about a month ago, this only works if it's bipartisan. Have you heard of Simpson Bowles? We should have done it. Obama was right to get everybody in a room, and what it was about is adjusting the age of retirement for younger people, work a couple years longer because we live so much longer, people in my income level taking a little less from Social Security and paying more in premiums in Medicare. And if we'll do that, the ship will right itself, because when the baby boomers die out, you're going to have the opposite problem. You really won't have that many people to maintain the system. So one final story. When I was 21, my mom died. When I was 22, my dad died. We owned a liquor store, a restaurant, and a bar in Central South Carolina. We were underinsured. She had Hodgkin's disease. We got wiped out because we were underinsured. My sister got Social Security survivor benefits from my parents' contributions, like $300 a month. We moved in with aunt and uncle working in textile plants. The $300 really mattered. I'm 64. Next year I'll be 65. I'll have a military retirement. I'm in good shape. I could take less and I would. When I was 22, needed every penny. So it's going to take a president to rally the nation to get in a room like Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill did, and you can't come out until everybody gives a little bit. So if Mark's running for president, I hope he'll talk about that. And here's the trade-off to the Republicans in the room. Democrats are not going to adjust the age of retirement and means test benefits unless we put revenue on the table. They're going to want tax rates to go up as part of an entitlement reform package. And if you don't do a deal, tax rates are going to go up and benefits are going to go down.
Yep. All right. So we just want to go back briefly to some of those gun measures that you were referencing earlier. You're good. You mentioned some of the background checks. You mentioned the red flag law that you've been pushing. The House has already passed one universal background checks bill over to the Senate. Hasn't been taken up. Some folks have been calling for McConnell to call the Senate back now and end August recess early. Do you support doing that, and what do you want to do with the universal background checks bill?
Well, what we're doing is the House bill, I don't think got any Republican votes and went a bit far. So here's the dilemma. To those of you who own a gun, how many of you plan to leave the gun to somebody in your family? Okay, well, we're not going to do background checks there, at least I'm not going to vote for that. If you sell a gun online, commercially, there ought to be a background check for the person who buys it. Commercial transactions would need background checks. That's what this whole thing is about. How far do you go? I think with some modification of the House bill, to be mentioned, the gun show loophole. Do you understand what that's about? So you go to a gun show, and if you're buying a gun from a federally licensed firearm dealer, you have to go through a background check. If I want to rent a booth and sell my own guns privately, there's no background check required, but people would say that's a commercial transaction. So I think that's sort of the area that we're going to find compromise in.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your proposal, this federal grant program to incentivize states to pass these so-called red flag laws?
Right.
Why is gun control a decision that is best left up to the states when this is a problem nationwide?
Well, because you got to get the law passed, and there's not going to be any votes much on our side to federalize the red flag situation. So what's happened, 17 states, I think, have protective order statutes in some form. To get the grant, you've got to have due process. The grant says that police officers petition the judge, not private individuals, that avoids the family conflict. More likely than not, standard to get the first order, and that's ex parte. That's an emergency hearing. You've got to prove more likely than not there's an imminent threat of death or bodily harm. If the cops convince the judge, they execute the order. 7 days later, you have a full-blown hearing where the government has to prove by clear and convincing evidence that the person in question is a danger to themselves or others. There's a private cause of action for the gun owner if somebody's lied about them. To me, it's about the most balanced approach I've seen. The White House is looking at it. And let me just say this. Something's got to change around here. I mean, we know that there's some people out there that need help, not a gun.
But what about the proposal that was in one of the House bills to extend the background check period from 3 days to 10 days? When you're talking about something that could take, 7 days, why not budge on that piece of legislation?
This is a hearing about the gun seizure. The background check, I don't know, 3 days seems to be in this world a pretty gracious period of time. If you had to wait 3 days for anything, you'd be complaining. So if you can show me 3 days is not enough, I mean, I'm not going to fall out of this chair. 3 days versus 10, I just want to make sure it's a reasonable period of time.
Well, yeah, this is the Charleston loophole that folks often talk about,
Which doesn't exist, by the way. So here's what happened. Dylan Ruth was charged with a crime in one county, and they went to the other county to check his background. They just didn't go to the right county. That was the FBI's fault.
All right, we're going to move on to immigration. You have been pushing a bill to deal with the asylum process.
I've been pushing every bill known to man.
You have been pushing a lot of different bills. One in particular is to
not a whole lot of success.
Is to reform the asylum process. As you say, not a whole lot of success. I was there with you on Capitol Hill the day you introduced that bill.
Yeah.
You said at the time you were hoping to get some Democratic support. You were hoping to negotiate over it. Then about the day before you left for August recess, you had a Judiciary Committee meeting that was incredibly contentious. Democrats were arguing that the bill is inhumane and that you were forcing it through the committee. One of the provisions there, you would allow you to keep children in detention for longer than they currently are. The maximum is 20 days. You would extend it to 100 days. That's one of the provisions they had a problem with. Can you explain why you would do that?
Well, number one, here's the problem. Remember the Gang of Eight bill?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
God bless you. A lot of people hated it, a lot of people liked it, but I thought it was a pretty good idea. So what we have today at the border is unique. This is something new. So what happens is that they're advertising in Spanish and now Arabic that if you pay a certain amount of money and you come to the United States and claim asylum, the chance of you being deported is pretty low. Now, how did this happen? Somebody found sort of a loophole in our law. We want people to come here who have been abused. I mean, I'm all for asylum for Christians in Syria, oppressed people. But the people coming to our border from Central America are just basically economic refugees. And they're bastardizing the asylum process. Right now, we have a 3-year backlog to hear an asylum case. If you step 1 foot on United States soil and claim asylum, you're entitled to a hearing. That's years down the road. We don't hold you for years. We let you go and nobody shows up. They're advertising. They give you a card, what to ask for. And here's the really weird thing. You know this wall thing? It ain't gonna fix this problem. They're trying to find the first Border Patrol agent they can find to say, here I am. Instead of running away from the law enforcement community, they're running toward it, saying, I seek asylum. If you have a minor child, the Flores decision, which was a district court decision, says you can only hold a child in DHS custody for 20 days. After that, you have to turn them over to labor HHS. How many of you want to separate families? I don't either. So if you don't separate the family, then we got a dilemma. You let the entire family go, or you come up with family detention. We don't have a family detention system with enough numbers to hold everybody until you can have your hearing. So when we let the child go, because we don't want to let the family, we don't want to break the family up, we let them go. 52,000 people have been released at the Rio Grande sector of the border this year based on the concept of the Flores decision. So what did I suggest? Apply for asylum in your home country or Mexico. If it's too dangerous in your home country, we'll build a UN facility in Mexico and you can apply for asylum there. If you bring a small child, we need more than 20 days to adjudicate the claim. We need to build facilities to keep families together humanely until the case can be adjudicated. If you win, everybody stays. If you lose, everybody goes back. They doubled the number of Central American refugees this year from last year. If we don't change these laws, it's going to double next year. This is a symptom of a greater problem. Can I talk about immigration broader? We got 2 borders, one with Mexico. What's the other country?
Yeah.
You haven't drunk that much. I've never met an illegal Canadian, but I've been looking for it. When I ran for president, it lasted about 2 weeks, and I was in New Hampshire and didn't even get a t-shirt for all that. But the bottom line is, people from Canada come to Myrtle Beach, they go swimming and they go home, and we're glad to have them. These are economic distressed situations. People live in economically deprived circumstances, violent circumstances. They're trying to come here for a better life. I get that. You just got to have some order out of chaos. 11 million people come here illegally. If they all left tomorrow, the economy would crash. If you know anything about the coast of South Carolina, we have a lot of people doing jobs that are probably illegal. The system to detect who's legal and who's not is not very good. So here's what I've always said. To the 11 million, unless you're a felon, you can stay. Learn the language, pay a fine, get the back of the line. 10 years from now, after your period of time is over, you can apply for a green card from the country where you came and wait your turn. In return, we get to secure the border where it actually is secure, control visa overstays, increase legal immigration so employers don't have to cheat, and transition to a merit-based immigration system to bring people from all over the world, not just Mexico. That got 68 votes 3 times in the Senate. I'm going to keep trying until we have a breakthrough. Told the president, you're not going to get 1 Democratic vote unless you deal with the 11 million realistically. I told my Democratic friends, I will realistically deal with 11 million, but we're not going to do this 20 years from now. I want to do what Ronald Reagan did not do, and that's the trade-off.
Sticking with policy tonight, what are your plans to address healthcare in this country? You fought for 75 days about 2 years ago for Graham Cassidy. Where does that stand now on the priority list among Republicans? And are you going to come forward with Graham Cassidy again for a second push? Or do you want to present something else?
Well, let me tell you about the Republican health care debate. The fact that it was my bill said a lot about where we were at. I'm not exactly an expert in the area of healthcare. But I came up with an idea that I stood the test of time. The way we reformed welfare in 94, 95 is we sent it back to the states. You got to spend the money on people who are struggling, low-income people, but you can come up with different ways of delivering welfare, and guess what? It actually worked. So my idea was leave the Obamacare funding in place, block grant it back to the states. You got to cover sick people. You can't spend it on football stadiums or bridges or roads, but you can have a lot of latitude to figure out what works best for you. If you want Medicare for all in California, knock yourself out. If you want to do something in South Carolina, you can. Now here's the unknown fact about Obamacare. 5 states get 35% of the money in Obamacare, and they're 22% of the population. What they had in common, they were high reimbursement Medicaid states, so they got a lot of money. My bill would level it out. The per patient spending would be the same no matter what state you live, with an inflation factor because some places are more expensive than others. That's called grant capacity. Here's the theory, that if you can vote for somebody who delivers your health care, you probably have a larger force than if somebody you'll never meet. If somebody you vote for actually sends their kids to the same hospital you send yours, they're probably going to pay attention to what's going on in their backyard. That's the theory of the case. Right now the debate is between Medicare for all, Obamacare, and something like grant capacity. So Medicare for all eliminates private health care. How many of you have health care through your employer? How many of you generally like it? Okay. That goes under Medicare for all. And that's a big debate in the Democratic Party. Is that too far, right? Obamacare, there were 5 exchanges set up in South Carolina. We're down to 1. Obamacare only covers 8% of the population, by the way. So it's over time proven not to be an effective way, in my view, to deliver to these people who are in the economic middle ground between Medicaid and enough money to really make it. I don't mind helping people in that area. I just rather do it in a way that's more sustainable than Obamacare. And so that's where we're at in the country. And this whole election is going to be about this. But let me tell you where Republicans, to the Republicans here, here's what we got to prove to everybody in this room. If you get sick, you're not going to lose your coverage. Because if people believe that about us, we're going to get creamed. And we've got to prove to people that's not our proposal, and it's not.
If I can follow up on that, you've often talked about politically the issue of Republicans repeatedly promising to repeal and replace Obamacare and then not doing it. It seems every election, you say, next election we have to do this, otherwise they're not going to vote for us again. And now we're talking about doing it after 2020. At a certain point, are people going to stop believing Republicans when they say they're going to actually do something on this?
Well, here's the dilemma. To repeal and replace Obamacare, you got to get enough votes in the Senate. We were 1 vote short. So the fight in the Democratic side is between Joe Biden, who's a very fine man, by the way. He's trying to make Obamacare better with a public option. Warren and Bernie are saying, no, the only way to be fair with health care is to have the government run it through a Medicare for all system. And the Republican Party has finally, I think, come up with this idea of let's let the power and money reside with the states, with control, so it can be spent on health care. Replacing Obamacare is happening all over the country when these exchanges fail. And my goal is to replace it with something more flexible. Bernie wants to replace it with something more government-centric. Obamacare is going to be replaced. It's just a question of what you replace it with.
And when you say you're going to give states more flexibility, and you talk about the concerns, that folks who have pre-existing conditions are going to lose their protection. This is a state that chose not to expand Medicaid, for example. There are a lot of Democrats in this state who don't want South Carolina to have more power over their health care. What do you say to that?
Well, you're going to lose the election. This is why you have elections, right? Medicaid expansion, I think, is a bad idea the way they envisioned it. It's the 2nd largest expense to the state of South Carolina. The matching portion of Medicaid is consuming our state budget. What I'd like to do, if you're a politician and you deny coverage to sick people, you're going to get your ass kicked. The system actually works. Republicans care as much about their family being covered when they get sick as Democrats. Here's the real question. What system is best able to deliver quality health care at an affordable price? I believe this with all my heart and soul. A system closer to where the patient lives, in the hands of people politically accountable to the taxpayer. I may be wrong, but I believe that. Who's the governor of South Carolina? Who's in charge of Obamacare in South Carolina? I don't know either.
We're going to transition out of, this is a question that actually came from Penny.
You're the most behaved people I've ever met. I think they scared the crap out of you.
Quite different than the
It's a little different than last week.
It's
a little
okay to
different.
yell at me if you want.
You're to kick us
Well, this question actually comes from one of our Palmetto Politics newsletter readers. Her name is.
They gave us these rules we can't boo.
Oh, okay.
We
Appreciate it. We've been able to cover a lot of ground
Yes,
tonight,
we
so
have.
thank you.
Yeah.
This question comes from one of our Palmetto Politics newsletter readers. Her name is Penny Parker. I hope she's here. If not, hat tip to Penny. She notes that the Republican Party's membership at this time is overwhelmingly white. And in 2012, you yourself acknowledged this as well at the RNC when you said, and I quote, "In the demographics race, we're losing badly. We're not generating enough angry white guys to stay in business for the long term." Do you still agree with that sentiment? And can you point to any policies proposed by or implemented by the Trump administration or the Republican Party currently to address this?
Okay.
That it can't be Tim Scott's plan.
No.
Okay.
I'll talk about Tim's plan in a minute. Criminal justice reform. Are you familiar with it?
Yes.
Okay. We've been working on this thing for a decade. This is where Jared Kushner's dad went to jail, and it had a real effect on him. So he was able to get the presidency here. The one thing about President Trump, he's no more ideological than I am tall. So if you can get his attention on an issue, he'll definitely think outside the box. So I would say that the majority of people that are going to benefit from criminal justice reform are African American and Hispanic males. So what did criminal justice reform do? At the federal level, it basically gave you a chance to accelerate your good time credits. It directed you into programs that would make you more viable to stay out of jail. And if you actually help yourself while you're in jail, you could get out quicker. And did you know there's no parole in the federal system? I've been to a bunch of jails, just Disney, and same story. Long sentences from the 80s. Remember the 80s? Some of you don't. Let's lock them up and throw away the key. Sounds good. Then you wake up in the early 2000s, you got a large number of people who are doing 30 and 40 years because they had marijuana or cocaine with a gun in the car. And sentencing guidelines had absolutely very little flexibility. Met a guy doing 45 years in jail, stole a car when he was 18, had drugs in the car and a gun. Now, 30 years later, I think it'd be good to let him out. Everybody in the jail says, we're doing nobody any good. This guy should be out of jail working. That's an example where I think something happened on President Trump's watch that needed to happen. By 2050, a majority of the country is going to be non-Caucasian. Majority of America will be non-Caucasian. We're getting about 30% of the Hispanic vote nationally and around 10 or 12% of the African American vote. If you're a Republican, play it out. We either grow or we die. Now, the best way to grow is to sell what you believe rather than change who you are. And this is where Tim comes in. I'm a short white guy, in case you haven't noticed. Tim represents, he's the only African American senator, and he goes through hell every day. He believes in conservatism, and he believes in helping people. He's been on the receiving end of being helped. The economy for African Americans and Hispanic families are doing better today than any time in recorded history. If we could turn down the rhetoric just a little bit, focus on policies. The biggest victims of poor performing schools are usually minority families. If we could deal with that issue and open up school opportunities for people who've been locked in the failing systems, that do us all a great deal, but help the Republican Party. Immigration. Nobody's going to vote for you if you're going to deport their grandmother. I don't care how good of policies you have. We got to convince the Hispanic community and others it's about legal immigration, it's not about your last name. So if we can get immigration fixed in the way I described, and we can continue to spread the economic benefit of being an American to more people, this is going to right its ship. But the key is to find more people serving as Republicans who look like America in 2050.
There have been some folks who have caused some issues for Republicans who would like to do that. One of them has been Congressman Steve King, who's been back in the news this week for making comments that appeared to suggest that we would not have as many people around today if not for rape and incest. He had previously lost all of his committee assignments for seeming to suggest he didn't understand why the phrases white supremacy and white nationalist are offensive. Folks across the political spectrum, from Joe Cunningham here in the 1st District to Liz Cheney, the 4th ranking Republican in House Republican, have called for him to resign. Should he resign?
Well, I think the people in I think it's the 4th District or Iowa will fix this problem. How many of you believe in market forces? Sometimes they're slow, but they generally work. When you lost your committee assignment, when Liz Cheney says you ought to quit, you're probably going uphill. And Iowa's pretty flat, so it's hard to go uphill. So I think the rhetoric that this congressman has used over time has caught up with him. I think you see a Republican Party from the top to the bottom pushing back. I'm not sure that would have happened 10 years ago. So I'm hopeful that the party is going to grow and thrive, and I've tried to do my part to be inclusive with policy, and we'll see what happens.
And obviously he is, somewhat of an outlier congressman, but, there are, of course, folks who also talk about the leader of the party, President Trump's rhetoric at times, particularly some of these rallies. We had that send them back chant the other week regarding several Democratic congresswomen. Do anything that the president says raise issues for the Republicans in terms of broadening that base?
Sometimes, the president is a street fighter. I believe this with all my heart. You could be black as coal or an albino. If you like him, he likes you.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, there you go. But if you don't like him, he doesn't care if you're the Pope or who you are. I couldn't believe, the Pope said we ought to build bridges to each other, not walls. And he said, hey, you live behind the wall, why don't you come out of the wall? And the Pope apologized. So here's all I can say, is that, they're elected members of Congress, this is their home, they have a right to say what they want to say, but they don't have a right to be immune from pushback. Sometimes it goes too far, but here's the deal. I've never seen a guy under siege this much. This is ridiculous. This is really just everything all the time. This is what's going to get him reelected, by the way. It's driving me I'm the guy that introduced legislation saying you cannot fire the special counsel except for cause. Why? Because I didn't know. And I know that there was enough to be looked at, and we're our national laws, and I did my best, working with Democrats and Republicans, to give Mueller the space to do his job. Well, he's done his job. A lot of money, a lot of time, looked hard. And what have I learned over these outings with the president? If you can't collude with your own government, why do you think you're colluding with the Russian government? He ain't a colluder. So, when it comes to Trump, yeah, he's a handful, but the criticism's over the top too. True.
Well, Just out of curiosity, do you support the president and also Israel saying that they're going to prohibit those two congresswomen from visiting Israel? Just out of curiosity.
Well, how many of you been to Israel? It's a great place, always under siege. The BDS statement that Congressman Omar made really hit home to me. She compared Israel to Nazi Germany and South Africa. That's just over the top. Now, Israel's not without fault. I have no animosity against the Palestinians. I support a two-state solution. There is no one state that work. If you believe in a Jewish state, and the Palestinians are absorbed, if they vote over time, they're going to outvote the Jewish state. Well, if you believe in them staying in a one state and they can't vote, that's apartheid. So we need two states. But the BDS amendment, are you familiar with it? Is an international effort to boycott doing business with Israel because of the Palestinian situation. That is literally cutting Israel's throat. And I think they made a decision they're not going to invite somebody into the country that's got the knife.
Yeah. Yes, I
So do you
agree.
support it?
Could be Trump.
He did tweet after that decision that those two congresswomen, quote unquote, hate all Jews.
Yes.
Do you equate any criticism of Israeli government policy with necessarily hating an entire religion?
No, it's okay to criticize. I've been there more times than I can count. I'm telling my friends in Israel, you don't want to annex any more territory in the West Bank because you're going to take a two-state solution off the table. You've got to be reasonable here. The Palestinians are not going to go away. So the bottom line is criticizing Israel's fine, but to say you're doing it for the Benjamins is about as old an anti-Semitic rhetoric on the planet, right?
Yes.
So the thing she said, the only reason I'm helping Israel is for the money. The Jews control the media. You know, that's about as anti-Semitic as it gets. I don't know what's in their heart. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not pretending to be Dr. Phil. I judge people based on their actions. They're United States members of Congress. This is their home. I'm not asking them to go back, but I am asking them to kind of tone it down a notch here. Our friends in Israel are under siege, unlike any time I can remember. How many of you believe if the Ayatollah had a nuclear weapon, he'd actually use it? How many, against Israel, maybe against us? How many of you don't know the answer to that question? Don't you think if you're in Israel, you need to know the answer to that question?
Yes.
So, I cannot stress to you enough how dangerous times in which we live. The only reason 3,000 died on 9/11, not 3 million, they couldn't find a way to kill 3 million of us. When President Trump says he wants to leave Afghanistan, I said, well, what about Al-Qaeda and ISIS? They're not going to be at the peace table. What happens to all the young girls that are now going to school? That will be a stain on our honor. They're the future. The young people who have been mentored by us since 2002 are one day going to take over Afghanistan, not the Taliban. So, when it comes to the Islamic faith, I have been to Iraq and Afghanistan over 54 times that I can count. Most moms and dads over there want the same thing for their kids that you want here. Radical Islam is a real movement, but it's a minority within a minority view of the faith. I've had a lot of friends of mine in the Afghan, Iraqi military and legal system get killed by these bastards. They hate moderate Muslims more than they hate anybody else. And yes, most Muslims don't want to kill you. The ones who do want to kill you want to kill them too. So we're in a war here. We're crazy people who've adopted religion as the elixir to make them crazy. If we leave Afghanistan and go to zero, ISIS and Al-Qaeda will come back as sure as I'm sitting here. Nobody in the future will fight with us because they'll feel betrayed and abandoned. Same for the Kurds in Syria. And everything we work for is going to go back into hell. A handful, compared to the past troops, working with the Afghans can hold the place together. So all I will tell you here is I know you're tired of these wars and I can understand it. but it takes 2 to end a war. And the good news is, with a small footprint, we can do in the future what it took 140,000 to do in the past. But if we don't have that small footprint, we'll live to regret it.
All right, while we're here looking out at this scenery here, it feels appropriate to ask a question about climate change. You have created or helped create what is supposed to be a conservative caucus to
It's called the Roosevelt Caucus.
a Roosevelt caucus to try to present an alternative, a Republican view of how to address these issues.
Right.
What are your top priorities? People here, in Charleston are always
let's
concerned
do it
about
all.
offshore drilling or about
Right.
climate change, land preservation.
Let's start with climate change.
Yeah.
How many people believe that man-made CO2 emissions or trapping greenhouse gas effect is real? Okay? How many people think it's not real? How many people don't know? All right. Let's say it's half real. You'd want an insurance policy. And to my good friends on the Republican side, I've been to Greenland, I've been to Alaska, I've been to Norway, and I'm not a scientist, and I've got the grades to prove it. Me and science never were good friends. But everybody I've talked to that's made this their life work tells me that after the industrial age in modern times, CO2 emissions generated by man have created a greenhouse gas effect of trapping heat. Freon actually did create a hole in the ozone. And it was Bush 41 that banned Freon along with Reagan, and it repaired itself. So here's what I'm trying to do with the Roosevelt Caucus. The climate change is a real scientific phenomenon and a problem for the planet. The Green New Deal is nuts.
Yes.
You don't have to destroy the economy and save the environment. What you need to do is find ways to accelerate a lower carbon economy, share the technology. If India and China are not part of this, the Paris Accords were bad in the sense that India and China were exempted. So the Paris Accords were aspirational. How many know Bill Gates? Bill Gates has got the most common sense approach to this to anybody I know. Instead of a cap and trade system that's hard to implement, he says, why don't you put X amount of dollars, start with $10 billion a year, into an R&D fund to partner up with the private sector to accelerate low carbon technologies and try to move to a more carbon friendly economy, take the technology and sell it and make money on it. So that's where I'm headed. And I've come to believe that the phenomenon of man-made CO2 emissions is causing the planet to heat up. I don't think 12 years from now it's all going to blow up, but I do believe that the sooner we can become energy independent, the better. Dirty oil is buying oil and gas from people who hate your guts. Can you imagine what the world would look like if Putin had no money because we don't need oil like we used to need it? All the people that have oil and gas seem to be on the other side of who we are. Energy independence, clean air and clean water should be an aspiration for everybody in this room. And if America can be the ones to find the solution, then we'll make a ton of money and dominate this new century that's coming up. So that's where I'm at. And I know there's people in my party that don't agree with me, but that's where I'm at.
We're going to talk about your role on the Judiciary Committee, since you're chairman of that. It's a powerful committee. And it wasn't...
That's what everybody keeps telling me.
It wasn't so long ago that judges were overwhelmingly confirmed on a more bipartisan basis. But you yourself in recent months have said that you would like to see more conservative judges installed. Is there a way back toward a more neutral confirmation process that kind of gets back to the core of just electing and confirming good judges, regardless of whether they're more conservative or more liberal, and can the Republicans lead on this?
Okay, what's the biggest difference between the Senate and the House? Well, there are more people in the House, and we're all a bunch older. But the biggest difference is the minority matters in the Senate. It's a winner take all in the House. If you got one more vote on the other side, you can do anything you want. Have you heard of the 60-vote rule in the Senate? Okay. It's frustrating when you can't get what you want. You love it when you deny somebody what they want. The bottom line, there's gonna be a lot of pressure on a guy like me, a pretty traditional fellow, to change the Senate filibuster rules when it comes to legislation. Because the reason there are a bunch of things we would like to do that we can't do because there are not 60 votes for it. Judges have fundamentally, the rules have changed. It started with circuit court judges under Harry Reid. We tried to get Gorsuch through, couldn't get 60 votes. We changed the rules for the Supreme Court. So right now, all you need is a majority to confirm a judge. What does that mean over time? The judges are going to be more ideological. The bases of the party are going to have more influence. So the White House General Counsel and I have talked a lot about what you said. We're not going to get the purest person in town. We're going to get the person that represents conservative judging with honor and dignity. I'm worried that we're going to turn the court into a politics in a different form. But here's what I'm most worried about. That there'll be a move really soon to change the Senate rules on legislation. Prominent Democrats are already talking about this. The day we do that will be the end of the Senate as we know it. And will be the beginning of an era in American politics that's beyond the Wild Wild West. Thank God I can't do everything I want to do, as much as I like me. Thank God that no one group in America can have it their way all the time. I say that humbly because the checks and balances over time have worked. As to the judges, I voted for Sotomayor and Kagan because I thought they were qualified. And I can understand why Obama picked them. I hope you understand why I would not. They're qualified people with a different legal philosophy than most Republicans. When Trump won, I didn't vote for Trump. I voted for a guy I wouldn't know if he walked in the room, Evan somebody. The point is, I've accepted my defeat and I want to help this president. And he's done a good job on judges from my point of view. This list that he gave the public, that's kind of a who's who of conservative judges. Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh were appellate court judges with a record of distinction. Brett Kavanaugh was George W. Bush's private secretary, meaning he watched every document coming across President Bush's desk. From our point of view, he's as mainstream as you get. There's nothing exotic here. I told Democrats, he could have picked Judge Judy. You should be happy with Kavanaugh. So the bottom line is what happened to Kavanaugh pissed me off.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
I voted for their people. And I voted that for their people. Now, what am I trying to do with the committee? When you have two Democrats in the state, and there's no Republican, when it comes to district court judges, which has been the purview of the Senate for 200 years, I'm honoring the blue slip. We're not going to put a district court judge on the bench that you don't agree to. Now, whether or not they'll do that after I'm gone, I don't know. When it comes to circuit court judges, we'll consult, but you're not going to have a veto. If there were a vacancy on the Supreme Court tomorrow, it would be World War III. Do you agree?
Yeah.
And let me tell you,
Yeah.
here's the downstream effect. Who wants to be a judge with all this shit going on?
Yeah.
Shouldn't say that, but
Can you
who wants
stop
to?
swearing, please?
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that. I apologize. Yeah, I apologize. I shouldn't have said that. You're absolutely right. No, she's right. I'm wrong. Yeah, you're right. I'm wrong. So the bottom line here is that I don't want to drive good people away from being a judge. We want the best and brightest from both camps. Let's turn the heat down a little bit. When we come back, we're going to be taking up some Democratic nominees that the Democrats signed off on and hope that will relieve some of the pressure.
Quickly, do you not think that Mitch McConnell's decision not to hold the vote on Merrick Garland contributed to the deterioration of bipartisanship on judges?
Probably, but when you look at the facts, we hadn't confirmed anybody where you had a president of one party, the Senate controlled by the other. When the vacancy occurred in the last year of the presidency in 89 years, the primaries were actually ongoing at the time. And Joe Biden, when this happened, was going to happen on Bush 41, said, let's wait till after the election. So I don't think it was anything overly exotic.
If there's a vacancy next year, you're gonna fill it.
We'll see what happens next year.
Whoop. You don't want to give a firm answer on that one or the other?
The situation of where you have the president of one party and the Senate of another doesn't exist. All I can say about judges, I voted for every nominee to the Supreme Court. And when I did this as a Republican, it wasn't fun. I'm pro-life.
Good.
I got accused of not being pro-life. But the way I thought of it was this. If you take one or two issues and that becomes the litmus test for the court, that's not good for the country over time. How many of you believe elections matter? Well, I do too. And that's why I voted for President Obama's judges, because he won. And I wish that would hold true for President Trump.
Yes.
And I really believe this sincerely. If we don't turn this down, we're going to lose some highly qualified people from wanting to be judges.
All right, we're gonna end with a quick lightning round.
Okay.
You go
Yeah.
ahead, start.
Who is your favorite candidate in South Carolina's first congressional district race?
I can't name them.
Why not?
I don't even know who's running.
You've said this is a top priority for the Republican Party, and you can't name who's running.
Once we get a nominee. Yeah, I know a couple people. I think we got council people. Nancy Macy's running, the lady on city council. There are a bunch of people thinking about running. The only thing I know is I'm going to be behind the one that wins. Joe's a good guy. I just want the House back in our hands.
Which Democratic presidential candidate poses the biggest threat to President Trump?
Joe Biden.
Can you expand?
Yeah, I think Joe has a persona of being a decent guy. He is can relate to working people. He was part of the Obama administration that a lot of people hold in high esteem. He can be competitive personally in some of these states that are in play. There are about 5 states that matter, maybe 6. South Carolina is probably not going to be in the questionable column, neither is New York. But the thing about Joe, he's easily underestimated. The question for me is, what price does he have to pay to get the nomination? The one thing I know for sure, you're not going to be president of the United States if you want to decriminalize illegal entry into the country and give everybody who comes here free health care. That's not going to sell. There's some pretty extreme policies being pushed that Joe thus far has resisted. The question for me is, can he get the nomination holding that ground? I still think it's President Trump's to lose in this regard. There have been 2 one-term presidents since Nixon. Don't count forward, okay? Carter and 41, right? Carter had a world economy collapse. You remember the oil price problem, 17% mortgages. 41 had Perot. And that really hurt him. If President Trump can hold it together, we don't go into a recession, we don't do something crazy in Afghanistan, just hold it together, I think it's his election to lose. Those 5 or 6 states that really decided the election, if the economy is okay, I think President Trump, believe it or not, will be the safe bet. Because the one thing the Democratic Party is doing, we've got our problems, we've been honest about it here. They've got problems too. Their policy proposals are getting out of the mainstream of the country. The Green New Deal, Medicare for all, you just keep adding this stuff. Illegal immigrants get free health care. That's not going to sell.
From a 1,000-mile political perspective, what can Republicans learn from Democrats and what can Democrats learn from Republicans?
What can Republicans learn from Democrats? They didn't learn from us. Don't have 19 people running. So they have 23. Here's what I think we can, I think here's what we can learn from Democrats. make the party more like America. They have most African Americans, Hispanic members are Democrats. So I think we need to understand that Texas is changing, and we need to make a real concerted effort to recruit talented, young African American, Hispanic members of this party.
Yes.
And the Democratic Party has done a great job of recruiting women. We need to do a better job on our side. What can they learn from us? That most Americans are in the middle, not the left ditch, and that good economic policy of sharing, of having reasonable taxes actually works. If I were them, I would ask the question, why is the economy doing so well? And maybe learn from us about things that actually do work. You can have a good environment, but you can go too far if you crush the economy in the name of saving the environment. They need to moderate where they're going policy-wise, and we need to change the face of the Republican Party. And here's what I predict. If we don't, there'll be a third party rise. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but here's a word of warning. The United Kingdom is cracking up. How and why? Globalization is real, folks. There's no way to withdraw from a global economy. You can change the rules so you don't get cheated by China, but you're not going back. And technology is not going to stay stagnant. Artificial intelligence is just beginning. There are a lot of jobs today that won't exist in 5 years. And Britain is cracking up. There's a resistance to globalization in Great Britain. There's a resistance to being in the big systems. And you may see the demise of the United Kingdom in the next couple of years. That can come here. If the Democratic and Republican Party get out of touch with the glue that holds the country together, then we're going to pay a pretty heavy price. And what is that glue? It's a men, women, young, old, black, white, trying to do some good for their community, playing by the rules, and get up every morning with an optimistic view of who they are and who our country is. You don't see much of that right now, do you? So, Pints in politics is fun. There are a lot of places on the planet this is not remotely possible. I'm sorry I cussed. That was my bad. Very few places you can actually go and listen to somebody who makes policy for you and your family. And the only way we're going to hang on to this is to realize that Republicans and Democrats are not the enemy. The real enemy are the people who would kill you just for being an American. Thank you.
Amen.
Just real fast, just for fun, because he's in New
Okay.
Hampshire right now. Should Mark Sanford run for president, or is this crazy?
No, I don't. How many like Mark? I like Mark. I like Mark a lot. I think Mark, talk about the debt. You can really make a difference there if you get in the primary. You'll do better than I did, but the bar is low, my friend.
And a quick word association game. Just tell us the first thing that comes to mind when we say these names. Ready?
Okay.
Mick Mulvaney,
Cheap,
Nikki Haley,
talented,
Joe Biden,
nice,
Mitch McConnell,
steady.
Janie Harrison.
Don't know it.
And that's that. Thank you so much, and thank you all for coming out tonight.